Hey everybody, it's Chris with Chris Beat Cancer, and today my guest is Suzanne Nelson. Suzanne was diagnosed with endometrial cancer in 2014. She had a soccer ball-sized tumor removed from her abdomen that they thought was a fibroid tumor, and turned out it was cancerous. And then it was recommended strongly that she do chemotherapy and radiation. And she made a decision not to do that. And she instead decided to change her life in a big way and use nutrition and natural therapies to help her body heal. And so here she is, alive and well. And I'm excited to meet you, Suzanne, and share your story. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. I'm doing well.
Awesome. So let's talk about the time in your life, like when things were first starting to, I guess you could say, go wrong. Like, you had mentioned to me before we started recording that your abdomen was growing and you thought you were just putting on weight, right?
Well, I knew there was something wrong because I was having a lot of abnormal bleeding, and that's when I went to my OBGYN for a checkup. And after an ultrasound, I was diagnosed with uterine fibroids. Well, I did a little research and I thought, okay, I did some acupuncture and some juice fasts and a few things. Well, it actually made things worse, and the bleeding that I was experiencing just kept getting worse, and I kept getting bigger, just around the waist area. And so I went back again 3 months later and said, can you check it again? They checked me out and said, yeah, the fibroids are growing. And so I kind of went back to the drawing board and was working a little harder and doing some other things naturally. And once again, about 3 months later, went back. Well, this time I threw the towel in and decided to go ahead and have a hysterectomy after about 9 months of dealing with this. And that's when it was discovered during the surgery that it wasn't, in fact, uterine fibroids, but it was a large tumor. And I had even been sent to a surgeon that did a different type of surgery that I opted against doing, that I feel like could have been fatal, since it was a tumor, and it was a little more of a laparoscopic, but where and I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, so they recommended that you do laparoscopic power morcellation, which is where they stick this device in laparoscopically and they just like grind it all up in there and then like suction it out with the vacuum or whatever. And as it turns out, that procedure is terrible because it spreads cancer cells like throughout your abdominal cavity. And the FDA so you were right there towards the end of, or right when they were figuring out this was a terrible procedure. Because in the subsequent years, like 2016, 2015, 2016, all these reports started coming out about how bad this procedure was for removing fibroids, and it was spreading cancer cells in women's abdomens. Because the problem with fibroids, if they're really big, there can be parts of the fibroid that have cancer cells. And they could do a biopsy on it and not pull any cancer cells out and think it's benign. But then when they grind it up, the cancer cells that are in that fibroid somewhere get spread in the abdomen.
So I felt like that was fortunate that I opted not to have that done. However, my surgery was not performed by an oncologist because no one knew that I had cancer. So it was a regular surgeon that had some issues with the size of it, and so he had to cut it into 2 pieces. He called me 2 days later and said, I spilled cancer cells in your body. I need you to go see this oncologist. So when I went to that oncologist, he said that my cancer had been very advanced and they wanted to do radiation right away, start in 2 weeks. They wanted to do a staging surgery, removing 50 to 60 lymph nodes, and they wanted to probably start some chemotherapy after that. But his 2 main things were the staging surgery and the radiation.
When was that staging surgery supposed to happen?
He asked me to sign paperwork to do it 2 weeks following my surgery of the hysterectomy. I wasn't ready to do anything that soon, And so I told him that I wasn't going to sign the paperwork. He told me that that was a really bad choice, that I could possibly die, and he was going to send a certified letter to my house stating all of this, which to this day I still haven't read. I was pretty upset about all of it, and I kind of refused to read it.
They sent me a certified letter too, by the way.
Yeah, so
They
we
did.
both got that same letter, letting us know that we're making a really bad choice. And honestly, that was the closest I ever got to God in that time of my life. And I've always been a Christian, but someone had given me a book when they found out that I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was a book about overcoming your fears and drawing closer to God. And the oddest thing happened to me right after that surgery. I put a twin bed in our bedroom so that I could get up and off of it pretty easily, because an 8-inch incision across your abdomen makes it a little difficult to climb into a normal bed. And every night at 3 a.m. I would wake up and I couldn't go back to sleep. So I would pull my Kindle out and start reading this book that this person had suggested I read. And then and it was a quick read, so when I finished that, I thought, I've never read the Bible from cover to cover, so I think I'm just going to do that. And so I started doing that. And for probably a month or two, I didn't set my alarm, but I had this internal clock that would wake me up at 3 a.m., and I felt like it was God, and I'd read till 4. And that's what gave me the courage to make the decision that I ultimately made when my surgery was in January. The middle of March, I ended up at cancer treatment centers after having gone there in February, persuaded by my sister, who's a physician. And I thought, you know what, God, if you want me to do chemotherapy, if you want me to do radiation, with your help, I can do it. So my first appointment was set. I showed up in the middle of March, and for some reason, my husband had gone to every appointment with me, but he couldn't make this particular appointment. He had his own appointment that day somewhere, and I went by myself, and actually with a friend, but it didn't concern me so much that she was there and what I was about to tell the doctor. I had really prayed about it, and I looked him in the eye and I said, God's going to heal me, and I'm not going to do chemotherapy today. And he said, well, I'm really worried about you. Would you let us monitor you and continue to, check your blood and scan you and all that? And I said, yes. I would be, I was really thankful that they were willing to do that, because there's always that little bit of fear that, are you really making the right decision? So I thought it would be nice to be monitored. And so I have gone there. Now they've got me reduced down to once a year. And they told me that the type of cancer I had would spread to my liver, to my lymph nodes. And so they gave me all the information that I needed to really focus on those areas of my body, with the type of foods I was eating, with the way I'm juicing, with the exercises I was doing, and all the other things. So I just pretty much did everything that I already knew about, because this is a lifestyle that I've lived ever since I was a teenager. I walked into Harry Zerbo's health food store in Livonia, Michigan as a 15-year-old back in the 70s, and was convinced by him that I needed to change my diet. And it just clicked with me that was a smart thing to do. But, over the years, you're not always on the right regimen, and you kind of deviate a little bit, and who knows, what causes different cancers. My husband and I adopted our children, so I never did have my own children. There's lots of different things that could have happened there, but I just the different paths that we take, it kind of leads you to where you end up and help you with those choices. So I had kind of gathered this information and felt really secure in making a a decision to not do what the doctors were recommending. Because I do know a lot of women who've had cancer like I've had, and they've had to go through all that. And I thought, you know what, I can always change my mind, but I'm going to give this a try and see. So I'm 4 years clean, and I have modified my diet back a little bit to what I would call, normal, but normal for me was always really healthy anyway. Because when that first year, I really got extreme, with eating healthy and juicing a lot.
Talk about what you did, just like your daily routine.
So my daily routine is, I always found it easier to have a shake in the morning. So I would put a half a cup of frozen blueberries in the blender with unsweetened flax milk or almond milk. I would add vegan protein powder. I've used a lot of different ones, but I always go with unsweetened. And if I need something to be a little sweeter, I'll add a couple drops of stevia. And then I was adding other powders to this. So I was using things like arabinogalactin powder or flaxseed or chia seeds. And so I put all of those things in that drink. And then while I'm drinking it, I'm swallowing a lot of pills along the way that I felt were, beneficial for me. I mean, everything from probiotics to lots of vitamin C, germanium, grapeseed extract, CoQ10. I had to type all this up for cancer treatment centers because my list was rather extensive. So I would do that for breakfast, and then for lunch I eat a raw organic salad, all my favorite vegetables with usually like the Bragg's dressing, or I would make my own, but I always like a good olive oil vinegar dressing. Sometimes I'd squirt extra flax oil on it, lots of nuts and seeds, and then I drink. At first I started with a carrot beet juice with celeriac and black radish. Which I don't recommend as far as taste-wise, but the black radish has a lot of beneficial things for people with cancer. It's very detoxifying, and I would drink that. I've since moved over into more of a green juice, so I juice things like fennel, romaine, kale, spinach, and I add lemon, and that's my current favorite juice. And then I'll repeat that again for dinner, but in the cooler months, I'll do vegetable soups, sweet potatoes, more warming kind of cooked foods. I'll add to the raw foods, but lots of water. I drink herb tea. I've drank Easy Act off and on for 4 years. Green tea. And then I bought years ago, probably 20 years ago, I bought an infrared sauna. So I started using that, not using it as much now as I did that first year. Also my rebounder I purchased probably 20 years ago and had to dust it off and get that back out and use that a lot the first year, not using it as much, but it was something that I felt like I really needed at the time. And
I got something I want to show you. Check this out.
Okay.
So this is my mom's book. This is the Miracle of Rebound Exercise by Al Carter, published in like published in like 1972 or something. So yeah,
I love it. It kind of reminds me, now that I'm even talking about it, I almost feel guilty that I haven't been rebounding as much. But one of the things that helped me get through it, and this was just such an important part of my healing that I can't deny this, is I would play Christian music when I was rebounding just to feed my soul and to keep my spirits positive, because it's a very frightening thing to be diagnosed with cancer and have, especially having small children. But when I would sit in the sauna, I would also watch Christian videos, just anything to kind of nourish my soul. I even like, Louise Hay was one of my favorite people to listen to and play her positive meditations and just anything to feed my soul and spirit while I was doing this. One of the things that happened shortly after my surgery, I developed numerous rashes all over my body that I think were a result of what was spilled in my body. And taking Epsom salt baths was something that I did on a daily basis for that first year. And I would either play music or watch sermons or different things that were uplifting and fed my soul, so that I felt like I was doing two really positive things at the same time. And it really encouraged me to do it that way, as opposed to just, honestly, the willpower that it took to eat the way that I ate is something that I feel like you can only get from God. And I really prayed about that and asked for his help with that, because I was giving up so many foods, and I wasn't taking this lightly. I did not allow myself to have anything at that time. And you could ask friends or family that were around me. I mean, I could go to a birthday party, a Christmas party, anything, and could not be convinced to eat anything outside of the realm of the raw organic foods that I felt were healing my body.
Well, we did the exact same things. It's so funny. People who know me, know my story, are probably laughing watching this, because, I mean, almost everything you're saying that you did is what I did. Almost everything you're talking about. I mean, from the, raw food, of course, juices, rebounding, going really deep in faith, listening to Christian music and worship music. I didn't have a sauna, but I did go to saunas and use them. Yeah, I mean, it's just, there's these common threads that I see over and over and over again with people who've healed, and it's doing the things that you did and that I did.
Yes. It's interesting. It's like the information is out there, and I love that you're doing what you're doing, especially in this day and age of technology, so that you're making this so much more available. It wasn't, even with my exposure of, 20 some years of having been around natural things and natural foods, I still had to really seek this out. And one of the things that was kind of interesting when I went to one of my, not my oncologist visit, but with my husband to meet his oncologist for the first time.
Because he had cancer at the same time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't tell that part of the story.
Our symptoms started back in March of 2013. And his symptoms, his was more pain, and then he controlled it for a while, and then it got so bad he couldn't even walk. So he went and got checked out. Well, it turns out his was a lymphoma, and he being a physician himself, he was very nervous about my suggestions of going on juice fast and doing natural things, and he really didn't have peace until he decided to do chemotherapy. So, I'm not totally against that, because I've seen both sides of it, and I think, for some individuals that might be the road. But I have since put him on the best diet you could possibly be on, so he's doing a really good preventative maintenance now so that it doesn't come back. But I asked his oncologist when we first met him, and I said, is there anything that I can do food-wise to help him at home? And he looked at me, he said, no, there's nothing. And, I was so disappointed in that. And I know they don't all believe that way, because at cancer treatment centers, they're totally on board with eating healthy. But I was just so disappointed that he did not acknowledge that there was going to be anything helpful to that. And I went to every one of his treatments where the infusions for the chemotherapy, and there's a nurse walking around with a basket of food to see if you want a snack, and it's muffins and cookies and candy, and they'll bring you pop, and they'll bring you coffee, and they're supporting all of the things that I think could potentially make your cancer worse and make your body weaker. And and so that's just what's disappointing, is that, there could be good balance there for everyone. And so, I feel like I just ran the other direction completely, over into the natural, and I'm thankful I did. I have no regrets about that.
It's such a funny situation looking back, right? I mean, that your husband's a doctor. He gets, was it non-Hodgkin's or Hodgkin's?
It was non-Hodgkin.
Yeah. So he gets NHL, and then you get endometrial cancer at the same time. He goes conventional, you go alternative. I mean, it's almost like The Odd Couple or something, right?
Yeah, it was. And, it was interesting, because when it was kind of my turn to make a decision, he was just as upset about my choice to not do anything as I was about his choice to go with it, So I love him, he loves me, and we agreed to disagree about that. But one thing that we don't disagree about is that we have to take care of our bodies now. So he is totally on board with eating all of the healthy food that I bring home for him, and the juicing that we do together. And, we try to feed our kids healthy. And he always was a healthy eater. But I think, for both of us, I think we discovered that we had a lot of stress in our life, and we both have taken on too much. And so this is a little bit of a wake-up call to slow down and, just take better care of ourselves so that we can be around to help other people.
Yeah, that's such an important thread that runs through almost every cancer story, is the stress factor. Even the folks that are really healthy and exercising and are, eating right, usually it's tons of stress. That's it. Long-term chronic stress suppresses your immune function. And that really, over time, creates an environment in your body where cancer can thrive. And that's a problem. And I do want to say one thing, too, is that, a couple things related to your husband's story. One is that, there are a few different cancers that respond really well to chemotherapy. Lymphomas are in that group. Also, childhood leukemia and testicular cancer. They respond really well. They have, upwards of 90% 10-year survival. So that's good, right? But your type of cancer, endometrial, my type, colon, breast, liver, brain, lung, cervical ovarian, the solid tumor cancers do not respond well to chemotherapy. I mean, you can get some shrinkage, but the 5-year survival and the overall death rate hasn't changed in almost 60 years for those cancers. And so, just to be fair, right? Yes,
yeah.
Those.
Well, Chris,
your husband's type of cancer does respond well to chemotherapy. But the other thing, like on the flip side, now that he's past it, there was a study that just came out a few weeks ago out of France, where they found that they surveyed tens of thousands of people over 5 years. No, it might have been longer, but I may be misquoting that. But I'll put a link to the study below this in the show notes. But anyway, the conclusion of the study was that women who ate an organic diet had about a 34% decreased risk of cancer. And of all the study participants, those who ate organic had a 70 to 80% decreased risk of lymphomas. So we know that there is a strong connection between conventionally produced food, right? Glyphosate or other pesticides, fungicides, herbicides that are sprayed on food, and lymphomas. So for your husband especially, it's especially important to eat organic.
Chris, something else that I kind of learned as I went through this journey was I sought out natural doctors, and I had gone to a variety of chiropractors or naturopaths with just, some additional help on what can I do.
Me too.
One of the diagnostics that was used was where this one chiropractor would prick my finger and put a little bit of blood under the slide and look at it immediately under a microscope. So I was having this done about once every 3 months.
Live blood analysis.
which is completely different than what they were doing at cancer treatment centers, because I asked them if they could do that, but they don't. They take your blood, but then, they look at it, So long story short is, I saw the critters crawling around in my blood the first time I did that live blood analysis. So I immediately started on a parasite regimen. And this is also where the black radish came in, and then, just other supplements that I took for that. And then I saw those things diminish in my blood. And these are microscopic, so I wouldn't have known about them any other way. In addition to that, there was a lot of candida in my blood. And then numerous times, right after my diagnosis and surgery, I broke out with shingles for the first time ever. And I've had little bouts with that off and on, I think more stress related, but what it tells me is I have that virus in my system. So I had all of these things that, separately may be okay to handle, but when you've got all three going on at once, an overgrowth of candida, parasites in your body, that's a toxic load. And so little by little, I kind of chipped away at all of these things, using natural, foods and supplements. And I really feel like that's my cancer prevention. It's like I'm not necessarily chasing the cancer anymore, but I'm trying to keep these other things at bay that I feel like kind of got out of control.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agree with you. And what you're talking about is really just having a holistic approach to health, right? Is keeping your body in a state where cancer can't thrive. Instead of the way that, unfortunately, most medical conventional treatments work is they just want to kill cancer, kill cancer. Well, the problem is you can kill cancer. It's pretty easy to kill it. But if you don't change the terrain, the cancer cells you didn't kill, which are usually the stem cells, they just form new tumors. And so, yeah, that's what it's about, is maintaining homeostasis, getting rid of bacteria, parasites, pathogens, harmful bacteria, obviously. And I've done live blood analysis, and it is pretty fascinating because you can see that the health, the condition of your red blood cells. If they're round and have a bright ring around them, they're healthy. If they're kind of misshapen and look like, raisins and they're clumped together, that's not good. And then you can also see little weird little critters and things swimming around in there that you're thinking this probably shouldn't be there. And the problem with viruses, bacteria, parasites is they distract your immune system, right? Your immune system's so busy chasing these things around that it's not paying attention to cancer cells. And so I love what you said, because I say it all the time too, is reducing your toxic load, right? It's just little by little, just removing these things from your life, from your body that could be contributing to disease or keeping you sick or impairing your immune system, suppressing your immune system, things like that. So it's all good. Every little step, every little change adds up to big results. So what would you say to someone if they were just diagnosed with cancer and they came to you and said, hey, okay, Suzanne, what do I need to know?
So I actually had a lady come in here a couple days ago and was just diagnosed with cancer. And what I told her, besides giving her a few suggestions on things that she could start with naturally, she had luckily done some of her own homework and is familiar with your blog. And I always tell people to pray about it, because in her instance, she's wanting to go all natural. Her husband is very upset with her choice. And, so I tell people you've got to get in the Word and with God on making this decision. It's not one to make lightly. And you certainly need to know that you've got that support in order to know that you're making the right decision.
In terms of attitude, what would you tell someone?
Certainly our attitude has everything to do with our healing. If we think that we're going to die, then we probably are. And if we think we're going to live, then there's a good chance that that's what's going to happen. None of us really knows when our time is going to be, but I felt really positive that I would probably die if I did chemotherapy and radiation, and that if I did all natural, that I would live. And that's why I chose that path, because that path gave me peace. My husband, on the other hand, did not feel that way. He felt like if he did not do the chemotherapy, that he would not survive. And, I mean, that was his choice. And so far, he's done really well. So it's such a personal choice. But I just think it's important that people know that they do have a choice, and that they're not bullied into doing something that they don't want to do, that scares them, just because people are scaring them, whether it be doctors or family members, that they have to get their own information and make their own choice with whatever help that they have, whether it be family members or their conversation with God or their doctor.
I couldn't agree more. Prayer is huge. I don't think anyone should be rushed in to treatment, assuming they're not in a life-threatening situation. Most cancer patients are rushed into treatment that they don't understand, and a lot of times they don't feel good about, but they're led to believe that they have no other choice. And one thing I did was I created a free guide for cancer patients. It's called 20 Questions for Your Oncologist. And anybody, if you haven't read this or whatever, there's a link below this video, or if you're on Chris Beat Cancer, you'll see a link to it in the sidebar. But download this guide, because it will give you all of these really important questions that you need to ask your doctor, your oncologist, before you say yes to treatment, so you can get all the facts. Because the problem is doctors are busy. They see so many patients every day. They don't have enough time to really sit down with you and tell you everything you need to know. And asking the right questions can absolutely dramatically transform your mindset about treatment. And it will empower you with confidence and information, and it will prevent you from getting in the situation that I see so many patients in, which is they said yes to treatment, it didn't go well, lots of harmful side effects, and then now they don't know what to do, right? So knowledge is power. If you ask the right questions, you get the right answers. So again, that 20 Questions for Your Oncologist guide, go download it on my site, people, if you haven't yet, because it'll help you a lot. One other thing you said that I thought was so interesting, and I agree too, is that having that determination and that will to live, where you were 100% committed to health, right? And you didn't budge, right? You said, like, I'm eating this diet, like organic, raw food diet, juicing, like, I don't care if I go to a birthday party or a bar mitzvah or whatever, like, I'm not eating any food that is not, sort of on my list of approved health promoting foods, right?
Right.
I was the same way.
Yeah, and I know that's really difficult for some people, or either that, or maybe that it's just that sometimes I feel like if you go a little bit the medical route, it's a license to kind of eat whatever.
Absolutely, they give you full permission to eat whatever you want.
And now the other thing that I witnessed too, prior to my husband starting the chemotherapy, I had about 3-week window there where I was just putting juices in front of him daily, salads, and he was eating all of it and enjoying it. As soon as he started that chemotherapy, his taste buds changed, it changed his mouth, and all he wanted was comfort food. So I just had to give in to that, and he was eating a lot more, bread and potatoes and things like that. It wasn't really bad for you food, but it wasn't the really, super healthy stuff that I was previously giving him, and he lost his appetite for it.
Yeah, he didn't want broccoli.
He did not. And so it wasn't until after he finished the chemo and kind of recovered a little bit that he was willing to start eating healthy. So that was just an interesting sideline that I noticed, that, it's really hard for people to eat healthy.
It is. It's hard anyway, right? If you have cancer, that's a pretty strong motivator. It was for me. But if you're doing chemotherapy, that does make it more difficult, because, everything tastes terrible, right? I mean, it really takes some extreme willpower, I think. And I have so much respect for the folks that I know who are going through conventional treatment, but they're also overdosing on nutrition. They've also decided to go hardcore with juicing and giant salads and raw food and smoothies and like all this good stuff. So it doesn't have to be one or the other, right? You can do both. It is harder, but you can definitely do both. And I always try to make it a point, or I have many times, that I don't want to exclude people. I don't want to make people feel bad about their choices. We all have to. We all are responsible for our own life, and we all have to deal with the consequences of our choices. And so everybody needs to make the choices that are best for them, or that they believe are best for them. And belief is powerful. I mean, you believed that chemotherapy would probably, and radiation too, do more harm than good, right? And your husband believed that they would be more helpful. Well, we know based on the evidence that they are pretty helpful for lymphomas, and they aren't that helpful for your type of cancer. So both of your instincts were correct, right? You both listened to your instincts and intuition, and were correct in that way. But going against your beliefs is something that unfortunately I see cancer patients doing, where they believe that treatments are going to be really harmful for them, right? But they say yes to them anyway because they don't know what else to do, and there's so much pressure.
Right. Because there's several people that I know that I've just stayed in close contact with during their journey down a natural path, because they get scared. And it is a dark place. You know, they've been turned away by doctors when they've said, well, I don't want to do it. And now they don't have anyone to go to. And so I've been in a unique position to be able to help several people like that, since they know that I've experienced that. That was something I did want to mention was, you know, it's an odd thing to have a cancer diagnosis and feel like it is a blessing. And I have felt that way, and you probably feel the same way too, because now you're using it to help so many people, and that's exactly what has happened to me. Is it's opened the door for me to help people in a more legitimate way. Prior to that, I was helping people with cancer, but I was kind of in the dark myself, not really knowing, and having dealt with both my husband and myself just through more research and trial and error, and using my own body as a guinea pig for a lot of this. I know what it does. I know what the different supplements do and what eating this way does. And so I'm able to share that and encourage and help and, you know, other people on this same journey.
Well, your pain becomes your purpose, and your mess becomes your message, as they say.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And I talk about this sometimes too, but, you know, I don't see cancer as a blessing, but God blessed me through it. You know, he blessed me as a result of it. That's probably a better way of wording it. But I get it, though. I totally understand how people say it was a blessing to them, because it changed their life. It reset their perspective. It taught them how to take care of themselves. It taught them how to forgive. You know, it taught them so much about life and love and happiness and health that they see it as a blessing. And like, I won't argue with you, you know, like, so it's good. You know, there's so much good that can come out of it. It just reminds me of the very first Bible verse that came to mind after my diagnosis was, God works all things for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purpose, which is Romans 8:28. So like very early in my cancer experience, I thought of that verse and I thought, okay, like, I'm just going to believe that you're going to work this for my good. Like, I don't like it. I would wish I would trade places with anybody right now, but I've got no choice. I can either just sort of sink into hopelessness and despair and cross my fingers, or I can exercise my faith and choose to believe that God is going to work this for my good somehow. And he did. I can say he did now. And I'm very thankful for that.
That's beautifully said.
I know you can relate.
Yes, I really can.
Well, Suzanne, This has been so much fun. Thank you for taking time out of your day to share your story. I know it's going to encourage a lot of people, and that's this is just why I do what I do. Just want to keep encouraging people and inspiring them and giving them hope and also, you know, information that they can use to help themselves. So thanks again. Thanks for watching.
No,
thanks for listening.
you're welcome.
And
Thank
everybody,
you.
what's that?
Thank you. And thank you for what you do.
It's no thanks necessary. It's just, it just feels good to do it. So everybody, please like this video, share it, send it to people you care about, post your comments below, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.